Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Kayla and it's time to crack into a good book. So today's video is going to be my November releases video, and I have 15 books to talk to you about today. So like always, we'll start at the earliest in the month and work our way through the month. So the first book I'll talk about just came out today, November 3rd, and that is This Virtual Night by C.S. Friedman. So this is technically, I think, a follow-up to This Alien Shore, which I have not read, and I don't know if you actually need to read that before jumping into this, or if this can kind of work as a standalone. I have no idea, but this is a space opera, and basically here, it's like when deep space travel altered the genes of the first interstellar colonists, Earth abandoned them. However, some of these colonies have survived, and there's some new civilization of mental and physical variants that's been established, centered around clusters of space stations known as outworlds. So then there's some sort of suicide assault that destroyed the life support system of a major way station, and basically everything, the only thing that's known about this is that the young men responsible had received messages from an uninhabited sector of space and were playing some sort of virtual reality game. So we have two people joining up to investigate this. We have a mercenary explorer with a taste for high-risk ventures and a game designer who is trying to find the parties responsible for the attack in order to clear his name. So then I think we've got our characters traveling around, traveling around space to follow the trail of an enemy who can twist human minds to his purpose and whose plans could bring about the collapse of outworld civilization. So that sounds pretty fun. I like this. I think what drew me to this was this whole, I do love space operas, but, I think this connection with this, people thinking that they're playing a virtual reality game, that seems particularly interesting to me. So, this sounds super cool, and, I think This Alien Shore came out quite a while ago, so I may try to track down a copy of that and read it as well. The next book that also just came out November 3rd is The Ravens by Kass and Danielle Paige. So this is a dark urban fantasy, I believe, where we basically have a sorority of witches, which sounds awesome. So we've got this sorority, this Kappa Rho Nu, also known as the Ravens. So they generally seem like typical sorority girls, and they're at Westerly College in Savannah, Georgia. So it's like, they're not just regular sorority girls, they're witches. So we have one character, Scarlet, who is always known she's a witch, and she's determined to be the sorority's president, just like her mother and sister before her. However, I guess some sort of if a painful secret from her past comes to light, she could lose everything. And then we have another character who has no idea that she's a witch and kind of has been moving around a lot and doesn't really have friends. So she gets a bid to pledge the Ravens and is like, I'm going to do whatever it takes to be part of this. But I guess the only thing standing in her way is Scarlet, who thinks that Vivi is not, adequate material for the Ravens. However, we've got a dark power rising on campus, and they're going to have to put their rivalry aside to save their fellow sisters. Someone has discovered their secret, and that someone will do anything to see these witches burn. So that sounds like so much fun, obviously I love urban fantasy, and, I think this concept of, a sorority full of witches sounds just like an absolute blast. The next book I'll talk about was supposed to come out November 5th, but I think the release date may have been pushed back by a couple of days, but it's coming out, I think, early November, and that's Proud Fox by J.P. Harker. So this is book 4 in the Caledon Saga, which I've talked about numerous times on my channel, but this is essentially like a sort of historical fantasy series based on Roman and Celtic societies, essentially. So here we've got Eleazar, who is a prince, and he's building mud huts in the middle of nowhere. So, and he's having a grand old time. He has been welcomed into the Caledon and is pretty content to stay there. And, this may or may not be influenced by a woman who seems to find him as intriguing as he finds her. However, trouble is brewing back in the land where he's from. We've got the Gaian Emperor trying to fight a war, and basically Eleazar may be a valuable ally or useful hostage. So basically it's his happy life among the Caledon may soon come under threat as games of power reach to grasp him from across the sea. But a man must love his fate, for what else can he do? So I'm obviously super excited about this. I have had such a good time reading the Caledon books, and for the past few months, I don't think I've mentioned this on my channel, but I've been helping playtest a board game version based on this book series, and it's just been so much fun. It's kind of like Risk, I guess, but you've got the different tribes of the Caledon and different legions for the Gaians. So basically, you know, you're basically like trying to take over the board, and you can play as different like chieftains and different characters, which is super fun, and each person has like a different ability. So basically, like, it's just become such a fun experience, and I just like really want more people to read this series. And you know, with the prospect of this board game being developed, I feel like that can pull in some even more people to just, you know, want to enjoy this whole saga. So now we move to November 10th, and the first book I'll talk about here is From a Certain Point of View, and this is the Empire Strikes Back version. This is somehow the 40th anniversary of the Empire Strikes Back. But basically the premise here is like, we've got 40 storytellers recreating an iconic scene from the movie through the eyes of a supporting character. Tracy Deonn, the author of Legendborn, is delving into the dark heart of the Dagobah cave where Luke confronts a terrifying vision. We have something from Martha Wells, who's going into the Ugnaught clans who dwell in the depths of Cloud City. We have some stuff from S.A. Chakraborty, Zoraida Cordova, Alexander Freed, who's written some Star Wars books. Several people, it looks like, have written some actual like Star Wars books. Art Kuang, Kevin Scott, Emily Skrutsky, Jago Wexler, and like, I mean, obviously there are 40 authors, so lots of other stuff. So basically, what's interesting here is the proceeds for this book will be donated to a nonprofit that provides new books, learning materials, and other essentials to educators and organizations serving children in need. So that sounds really awesome. It sounds like so much fun, and you know how much I love Star Wars. The next book that comes out November 10th is XX by Rian Hughes, and so this is like a gigantic book. I think it comes in at almost 1,000 pages, but it's like this mixed media formatting, which is, you know, what kind of drew me in. Like, I really enjoy mixed media format books. So this is, I think, a sci-fi book where we're in England. A radio telescope has detected a mysterious signal of extraterrestrial origin that could be the first communication from an interstellar civilization. So we have an AI expert who believes that he and his associates at this tech startup company can interpret this message and possibly find a way to step into the realm the signal encodes. I'm not really sure what that means, but that sounds interesting. But basically they find this really complex alien network. So it's like assembled from redacted NASA reports, artwork, magazine articles, secret transcripts, and then there's like this novel within a novel thing. So I think the author is actually a graphic designer himself, so you know, I'm sure that this mixed media formatting is going to be really awesome, and I've heard it's kind of dense, and you really need to like spend your time kind of looking at each page and like absorbing what all is there. But you know, I mean, that is gigantic, but it sounds so cool. The next book I'll talk about that comes out November 10th is The Rush's Edge by Ginger Smith. This is, I think, a sci-fi book where we have our main character who's a genetically engineered and technology implanted ex-soldier. And basically he doesn't see himself as a hero. After getting out of the service, he just kind of wants to chase the adrenaline rush that his body was designed to crave. And he knows that he's not going to live long anyway because soldiers like him are kind of designed to die early and will be like burnt out from constantly seeking this adrenaline rush. So his best friend and former commanding officer is like obviously determined to not let that happen and has been distracting him by salvaging crashed ships in the Edge. So then their ship gets a new crew member who is a hacker turned techer, and they become friends and possibly something more. However, on a job the crew finds a sphere that downloads an alien presence into their ship, so I'm sure that will not go well. So we've got multiple clashes with the military, forcing, you know, the crew members to choose sides. Basically this battle will determine the fate of the VATs, which are these like genetically engineered soldiers, and the natural borns throughout the galaxy. You know, it's like, will they join the movement against the coalition? What has invaded the ship's computer? Can there be a real future for a VAT with an expiration date? So that sounds really awesome. I think what drew me in here was the concept of like downloading an alien presence into their ship. That sounds ominous, and you know, I definitely want to see what all happens there. But I think just like the general concept of these genetically engineered soldiers kind of like fighting for their rights, that sounds really awesome. I think I actually just discovered this today, so you know, it's a fresher find, but I'm excited to read it. The next book I'll talk about that comes out November 10th is Little Threats by Emily Schultz. So this is a thriller. So in 1993, we have these twin sisters kind of, you know, living their lives, embracing the grunge era, and testing every limit in their privileged suburb. However, one of the sisters' teenage rebellion goes too far when, after a night of partying, her best friend is murdered and suspicion falls onto this sister. She can't remember anything about this night, though, and so there's, I guess, some damning testimony from a college boy who both this sister and her best friend loved, and so basically she's forced to enter a guilty plea. However, years later, in 2008, she's released into a world that has moved on without her. Her twin sister has kind of grown distant as she questions, Kennedy's innocence and begins a relationship with someone who could drive the sisters apart forever. Their father is eager to protect the family's secrets and fragile bonds, but I guess, the Kennedy's return brings this tragedy back to the surface, along with a new rush of media coverage. A crime show host comes to town asking questions, thinking that this murder wasn't as simple as it seemed. And basically Kennedy, I think, starts remembering what happened. We've got new suspects emerging, and the suburban woods are finally giving up their secrets. So that sounds really fun and definitely intense. I like this sort of like true crime element with this like crime show host coming into town. That sounds really fun. The next book that comes out November 10th is the Book of Malachi by T.C. Farren. So this is a sci-fi thriller where we have Malachi, who's a mute 30-year-old man, and he's just received an extraordinary job offer. Basically, if he works as a warden on a top secret organ farming project for 6 months, the pharmaceutical company will give him a new tongue. So he's on this oil rig among warlords and mass murderers, but are these prisoner donors as evil as this, pharmaceutical company says? Do they deserve their fate? Basically, it's like Malachi starts to doubt this, and it's like the stories of the desperate will not be silenced, even his own. He starts to, I think, learn more about these prisoners, even the ones he fears, and has to make a choice. If he wants to save one, he has to save them all and risk everything, including himself. Sci-fi thrillers are definitely very fun to read about. That sounds like we've got a little bit of horror coming in here, obviously with this organ farming, the deep sea oil rig. I feel like there's a lot of potential for just like really tense moments, and I think that sounds really fun. Alright, so now we move to November 17th, and the first book I'll talk about here is Rhythm of War by Brandon Sanderson. So obviously I've already pre-ordered this. So this is the latest entry in the Stormlight Archive, which is an epic high fantasy series. Let's see what I can tell you without trying to spoil things. We've got a coalition of human resistance fighting against an enemy invasion, and this war has kind of been going on for a bit. Neither side's gained an advantage, and there's the threat of a betrayal by an ally. So we've got some sort of new technological discoveries going on here, and the enemy is preparing a bold and dangerous operation. So we've got an arms race that will challenge the very core of the Radiant ideals and potentially reveal the secrets of an ancient tower that was once the heart of their strength. Ooh. One of the groups in this world is facing more enemies, awakening to wage war. No more honor spren are willing to bond with humans to increase the number of Radiants. And so they're basically, some of our characters have to lead the coalition's envoy to the honor spren's stronghold to either convince the spren to join the cause against the evil god or personally face the storm of failure. So, I mean, I don't know what I need to really say about this. I'm like very excited to read it. I love the Stormlight Archive series. It's like such a fun high fantasy series. There's some really cool magic. I finally got an Ivy to read Way of Kings, so I'll slowly get him to read the rest of the series, but it's just such a great series, and I am like super excited to read this installment. The next book I'll talk about that comes out November 17th is Nophek Gloss by Essa Hansen. This is the first book in a new space opera trilogy, and so our main character's planet has been destroyed and his family gone, so basically his only hope for survival is a crew of misfit aliens and a mysterious ship that seems to have a soul and a universe of its own. Basically, everybody's showing him that the universe is much bigger, much more advanced, and much more mysterious than he had ever imagined. However, there's obviously dangers here as well, so he's trying to get revenge on the slavers who murdered his people and took away his home. So he's trying to infiltrate and dismantle them from the inside or die trying. So that sounds so cool. I can't remember if there are horror elements to this or not. I feel like there may have been. But again, space opera is a genre that works really well for me. And I remember seeing this months ago on Twitter and was like, yes, I just need this. Everything about this sounds like something I would really enjoy. So, I can't wait to read it. The next book I'll talk about that comes out November 17th is The Bright and Breaking Sea by Chloe Neill. So Chloe Neill is the author of several urban fantasy books that I've read, but I believe that this is a high fantasy series. So this is basically like a seafaring fantasy. So we have our main character Kit, who was rescued as a foundling and raised in a home for talented girls and has been, working hard to rise through the ranks of the Isle's Crown Command and become one of the few female captains in the fleet. Her ship is small, but she's fast, in part because of Kit's magical affinity to the sea. Yes. However, so the Queen sends Kit on a special mission with a partner she had never asked for, who, I guess his partner is a veteran of the Continental War, but Kit doesn't really know him or his motives. But, obviously she has the orders. They're basically having to go to a pirate quay and rescue a spy who's been gathering intel, I guess, on the exiled emperor. Basically, they're gonna have to trust each other or else the Isles will fall. So, that sounds awesome. I already know that I very much enjoy Chloe Neill's writing, so I'm, pretty confident I'll like this. But also, I think, for me here, I really love this connection with the sea and just like general fantasy that takes place on the ocean is just like very much appealing to me. And I really like how this main character has some sort of affinity and bond with the sea. Like, that sounds really awesome. And, pirates are always fun. So I'm very excited for this. The next book I'll talk about that comes out November 17th is The Silver Shooter by Erin Lindsey. So this is the third book in the Rose Gallagher series. Now, I have not read the second one. I have it and have been meaning to read it. I may actually do that this month. But this is like a historical paranormal mystery series. It's 1887 and Rose is kind of making a name for herself, this Pinkerton agent with a specialty in things otherworldly. So it's like things are a little bit too good to be true, so she's not really surprised when Theodore Roosevelt descends on them with like a storm cloud, hiring them for a mysterious job out west. So there's been a series of strange occurrences in the Badlands, and he thinks that something supernatural is afoot. Basically, we've got livestock disappearing from the range, their bodies later discovered to be torn apart by something monstrously powerful, so now people are also dying. I guess a successful prospector has gone missing, and there's rumors about his lost stash of gold, so we've got a whole bunch of treasure hunters coming in, but they also keep disappearing. So there's also, in the last winter, a mysterious weather phenomenon devastating the land, so the locals are hungry, broke, and looking for someone to blame. So basically, our main characters are going out to investigate this, but they're against the clock and an unknown enemy, and the West is a little bit wilder than they could have imagined. So, that sounds so much fun. I really enjoyed the first book and obviously purchased the second. I need to get to it. But it's like a really fun historical mystery. I love this, the components of the supernatural. Like in the first one, I think there were ghosts, if I'm remembering that right, and just, kind of secret things afoot. So Rose is a really excellent main character. She is very, strong and intelligent, so that's excellent. The next book I'll talk about that comes out November 17th is Plunge by Joe Hill. So this is actually a graphic novel, I believe, and I think this may be just the collection of the 6 volumes that may have already been published. I'm not exactly sure. There's a distress signal going up from a ghost ship that's been lost for over 40 years. So a salvage team goes out to get lost data, and they're sent to recover the remains of the ship. But once they start exploring the ship and the island it crashed next to, they discover something much more menacing than they could have ever expected. There's something down in the icy darkness of the Arctic Sea that doesn't want to be found. And then, I guess on land, the long-lost crew of the ship emerges from caves, and they seem like they haven't aged a day, but they're all missing their eyes. So that sounds ominous. It's like, will the salvage crew survive to bring their findings to shore? What danger awaits for them if they fall? What dangers await us all should they succeed? I kind of mentioned this in my recent wrap-up video, how I enjoy this kind of expedition with supernatural or horror elements, and this definitely seems like it would be sort of the sub-genre that I really enjoy, so I definitely want to read this. So I realized this morning that in filming my releases video yesterday, I somehow forgot to mention The Burning God by R.F. Kuang, which comes out November 17th. So I'm not really sure what happened. I have a list of bookmarked books, organized by release date, and somehow this wasn't there, even though, I'm fairly certain I had bookmarked it. So it's probably Gremlins, so, who knows? But anyway, I'm super excited about this. It's the last book in the Poppy War trilogy. This is basically an adult fantasy that kind of is based on historical events in China. We've got a lot of different factions, trying to obtain power, and we've got different gods. So in this one, basically, I'm going to try to keep this a little bit vague to, not spoil anything, but our main character, Rin, there's been a lot of betrayals, let's just say. So she ends up, I think, going back to the southern provinces where she's from, and she has some new allies, that are kind of, maybe not super trustworthy, but she's kind of like realizing that the power in, the country kind of is among the common people, and so she's basically trying to utilize her resources to defeat her enemies and like invading countries and everybody who's like challenging their way of life. But she's also having to deal with the Phoenix and just trying to resist burning everything to the ground. So that sounds awesome. I'm very excited to see how this ends, especially after like the Dragon Republic. There were some very shocking events that happened, and I just desperately need to see how the series ends. All right, so now we move to November 24th, and the first book I'll talk about here is Forged by Benedict Jacka. So this is, I think, book 11 in the Alex Ferris series. Now, I'm not caught up. I really should get to the other books that I haven't read yet before the end of the year, but, I've been, like, kind of saving them because, like, I do and I don't want to be caught up on the series. But this is an excellent urban fantasy series about Alex, who is a diviner, so he can kind of, like, see probabilities and kind of, like, predict the future in that sense. Trying not to spoil things, Alex has had to change to protect his friends. We've got one of our life mages who has also changed and made a bond with a dangerous power. And she's also going after everyone she's got a grudge against, and it's a long list. So then Alex is also having to deal with his, arch enemy. We've got some death squads of the council that are hunting our characters. Alex is going to have to end his long war with his arch enemy by whatever means necessary. So we'll leave it at that. I really love this series. I've enjoyed every single book I've read so far. You can see some of them over here. If you're looking for an urban fantasy series that kind of has a similar feel to the Dresden Files, like, definitely check out this series. I think for me it has similar vibes, and I've, really enjoyed my time with it. So I do need to get caught up so that I can jump into Forged. And finally, the last book I'll talk about today that comes out November 24th is Grave War by Kalayna Price. So this is book 7 in the Alex Craft series, which I don't know if you can see those up there, but this is an urban fantasy series that kind of deals a lot with the Fae. Our main character is a grave witch, and so she can kind of like communicate with the dead. It looks like we've got an uneasy truce with the world of fairy, and Alex is still trying to keep, a normal life in the human world, but she has stepped up as the lead investigator for the Fae Investigation Bureau. So there's an explosion at a certain location that threatens to upend the Fae who make their home in the, the real world. So she's in charge of a far-reaching investigation, and it's just, her first week on the job. She's cut off from some of her allies, and she's going to have to take charge and hope that the Fae's conflicts stay contained within their borders. So I've really enjoyed the Alex Craft series so far, and, I definitely want to see how this series continues. So with that, those are the 15 books I have to talk to you about today. Let me know in the comments if you think you may read any of these books, and for your question of the day, are there other November releases that you're particularly excited about? I know there are several more books coming out this month that I didn't mention today, but these are the ones that I think I'm most excited to read. I do have a Discord channel, and if you want to join that, the link is in the description below. I hope you're all having an excellent day and are reading something awesome. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to give it a big thumbs up, so that would certainly help me out. But with that, I think I'm going to wrap it up here and see you in the next one.